This is a special presentation of New Worker Radio, bringing you updates from a recent international meeting of the PCE and the CWP. Comrade Manolis presents the CWP platform and responds to questions regarding our approach to organizing the working class in the U.S. This is the first in a series of episodes that we'll release based on the meeting between the PCE and the CWP.
Thank you, comrade. So first, we think it's necessary for the communists of the U.S. to kind of elaborate our strategy in order to effectively intervene in the struggles of the workers, to sharpen them, and also to gain the leading role for the final showdown. And so a strategy that does not begin with the working class at its center is writing its death sentence. The strategy of the communists corresponds to the struggles of the working class because in order to effectively fight for its interests, there needs to be a political vehicle. So without this political vehicle, the workers consistently see all their hard-fought achievements ripped from their hands. This has been the cycle in the U.S. For decades now. The workers of the U.S. have been fighting without a party. The landscape of the communist forces is such that currently there are many communist in name only parties, and there is no communist party. And for various reasons, these communist forces have many different incorrect theories of imperialism, leading to attempts to take the working class struggle and try to fuse it with the aim of multipolarity. They try to create broad alliances from above. That is just agreements between the leaderships of the parties, between organizations of different class characters, up to and even including the Democratic Party. The absence of the workplaces as the main soil for struggle, and then the dominance of reformist illusions. And when we say reformism, we mean there are still many forces in our country which still believe that there's a need to create a third party, up to and including the need to have an intermediate stage between capitalism and socialism. And so the strategy of the Communist Workers Platform is completely different from many of these forces that are trying to gain a foothold in the struggles that have been growing in our country. This is first and foremost that we attempt to reorganize and construct the Communist Party from this negative situation. We assess that there is no Communist Party in our country. And so the correct path forward, in our opinion, is one which answers the need for one. So only in this way can the interest of the workers be expressed and be carried forward in the fight for the socialist revolution, which is the main topic on the agenda of today. And of course, just stating this and claiming this objective is not enough. We must also aim to take this struggle, orient this strategy within the working class itself. The party cannot fill the majority of its ranks with a non-proletarian character. It has to seek to win the sections of the working class who, because of their position in production, are capable of truly answering the call of history, of paralyzing everything and bringing the capitalist imperialist system to its knees. And this power, generally speaking, is in the hands of the industrial proletariat. And so, building on this overall goal, the Communist Workers Platform has set itself the task of what we identify as the workers' turn to overcome the decades of incompetence within the so-called communist forces and the inability to organize the working class. This prioritizes the need for winning over the industrial proletariat, and that is when we say that we're talking about the working class in the main nodes of production. This places the center of our organizational efforts within the workplaces, where the daily experiences of the workers are the terrorism of their employer, the confrontation with capital. The workers can look around and see the power that they have in their numbers alongside their class brothers and sisters. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Communist Workers Platform takes the strategy where we pull our comrades from workplaces and send them to the factories. This is a big mistake. Instead, it shifts our focus from only showing up to protest, from handing out flyers in the parks, from only the movement to our places of work and winning over workers within these places of work. So we have defined these important sectors of work as the hospitals, the airports, the ports, the warehouses, the manufacturing centers, transportation workers, utility plants, large school districts, such as the metropolitan areas of Chicago and New York, and so forth.
I have a question for you. You know, I think in the United States it's quite complicated to establish a well-organized situation because you're facing one of the most terrifying structures of fascism in all the world. You know, all the MAGA structure, all the Trump government you have right now. So, I mean, it's quite complicated.
This is a great question. And of course, I would say that we have some differences on the characterization of the Trump administration as being fascist. We have not characterized it as such for various reasons. There's not been a dominance of monopoly capital organizing storm fronts like paramilitary groups. There has not been um, like a programmatic line or unity between the various far right groups that we have in the United States. They're still very split on very important questions, and also there's still within the general population there is a mass discontent with the Trump administration. And with that being said, you bring up a great point of the difficulty of organizing within the climate here that is regardless of Democrat or Republican, very reactionary in a situation where surveillance is becoming extremely dangerous for us to do our work. But I would say that for us, we are, you know, morally speaking, we are very motivated because when we first started, we began from a party called the Party of Communist USA. When we split from this organization, there was another organization that also split. And the task for them was the other organization. They were called American Council of Bolsheviks. It was too tall. They cited similar reasons that it was too complex. That maybe we need to start with with a newspaper only, or no, maybe we should just do. They're very law. So for us, what we believed was necessary was to begin the process of understanding that the party has a character that is all weather, meaning that it is capable of surviving in situations that is repressive, that it is capable of operating openly. And to do this, it requires an understanding of U.S. law. So, for example, being able for the party to pull in money, we have to follow business law, understand business law in order for us to be able to have funding mechanisms. We also have to teach newer comrades like, okay, how do I go about doing my work without getting caught? And it's not a process that is one and done. It's a process that is long. We've only been at this now for 4 years, 3 years, 3 years at most, 4 years now, and slowly and surely we are growing. But this requires moving away from, for us, we had to move away from online formats of organizing. And we had to actually take the risk and go out in person in our workplaces and develop methods of organization and work that is risky, but it is qualitatively pulling forces slowly and surely to us.
In the absence of total fascism and or total repression in the United States, we do have a lot of flexibility with the work that we are able to do. So strictly in person versus virtual, we need to be creative and we need to concretely analyze the situations and possibilities. And there are ways to achieve our broader strategy. And we do have to be mindful of the forms of repression and surveillance that exist, but it's not impossible.
So, comrades, based on this growth of the MAGA movement, based on the discontent, has the platform or your program found any way or maintains a line that looks to also capitalize on all this discontent? You know, when we hear a lot of the expressions of people from the MAGA movement. It almost seems as if they're criticizing the same system, the same capitalist system, even though they might refer to too much of their concerns and criticisms and hatred towards supposed communism. But it seems as if they're concerned with the same problem. Huh? So has the platform found any way or has the task of tapping into this discontent in the MAGA movement?
This question has actually a history in our country that can we place a very high blame on the history of the CPUSA, the Communist Party of the USA. The reason why we say this is because in the past, in the height of the Communist Party of the USA, the 30s, the 40s, even the early, even largely a part of the 20s, but specifically in the 30s and the 40s, the Communist Party USA had large bases of operation within areas that we would categorize as bases of the MAGA movement. This is, and I'm specifically referring to the South, the Appalachian region. The Communist Party USA had hubs of activity, of trading and movement, of linking, of bringing a slogan, black and white unity, of bringing, fusing the worker struggles and uniting the workers, and removing or trying to remove the issue that the splitting mechanism of the bourgeoisie, which is racism. And so when the party had liquidated itself as a result of the years of Browderism, it let go of this militant history in these regions. So it's essentially subordinated the working class to the interests of the ruling class. And in doing so, it led to these workers to be tossed around by the two major political parties, that is the Democrats and the Republicans. And we can go as far back as the presidency of Jimmy Carter, when largely privatizations began, and where this cycle of liberal really began to, and it really began to cause mass indignation and further shift segments of the working class to the right because of their disgust with the liberals, the Democratic Party. So as far as reaching them, we have to be careful with this question because one can reach a conclusion that we must go down to the level of the workers, go down to the backwardness of these sections, which is incorrect. So our task is to raise as the subjective factor, to raise the consciousness of the working class, and that takes place predominantly with the unity from below, and that takes place within our workers, within our workers' turn strategy. I'll give you a concrete example. Within the teachers' unions, there are many teachers who are reactionary. They side with the Republicans. They are bought into some of the MAGA aspects, but are represented by the union because of legal rights, because of health benefits, whatever it might be. They want to keep these things. However, they are also some of the most outspoken with the problems within the unions and the need to democratize them. So the experience there was that if we can fight strictly on the basis of class orientation, we have the ability to begin winning over these segments of the working class who are turning towards the Republicans, the MAGA movement as a way out. And so unity from below, first and foremost, fighting for the class interests in our experience is what is the answer to reach these segments of the working class.
Oh, okay. The comrade asked if how has how have people received you? Now that you've made this jump to more in person, on the floor work. How have people received how have they responded? Or are they interested? Are they not? And not only Latin Americans, because the issue of cultural diversity is also can be somewhat complicated. But in general, how have people received you all? Yeah. Mhm.
This is a great question. It's a good question because it largely depends on the location in the United States. For example, in the South, where it is basically illegal to be a communist, the situation is different, calling for more clandestine activity, especially within the trade unions or among the public sector unions, specifically among teachers, where some of our experience in the teachers unions has been one where specifically in the South, where the teachers respond positively to our to what we're putting forth, and that is just basic proposals: the need to democratize the union, the need to bring the union away um, from policies that try to balance the interests of the boss and the workers. Um, I would say that in areas like, for example, Chicago, where our work is rapidly growing, the response is very positive, where we are able to operate on multiple fronts without and more openly, without so much clandestine work. For example, hold open meetings in solidarity with Cuba, which was a first event for the Comrades of Chicago, where they were able to have a screening event and where broad sectors of various, um, various sectors showed up in support. And so Chicago is quickly becoming for us a base because of kind of tying it back to the question before, because of our ability to operate more openly here. So we try to balance like where we're at in the country and how we can carry out our work.
What we need to provide to the working class is a connection between their everyday issues and the overall capitalist system, which, when this agitation is done at the workplace level amongst our coworkers, connecting their specific issues that they face, long long commutes without compensation, um, loss of benefit time, rising prices, all these visceral, real, in their face experiences, connecting that with the need to combat the broader capitalist system. And first of all, having had the ideological development and leadership of the party to even make that connection in the first place, this has allowed us to have largely positive reception in person. This contrasts a little bit with the reception of, fellow, or not fellow, but other self-described socialists and communists who tend to, and this is mostly online spaces, which we barely concern ourselves with, um, tend to view our work and our positions as we've had the accusation of sectarian tossed around before, which is an accusation that we both in practice and in word deny. But it can't be emphasized enough how speaking to the workers, to our fellow workers, and connecting our issues with the overall system, this has been a complete qualitative difference between us and other organizations that the workers are exposed to.
Also, based on the previous question, if you have any specific speech or discourse, particularly with immigrants, taking away this blindfold or this veil of the American dream, or do you have anything practical in that sense?
Yeah, another good question. I would say that so we're the CWP is unique in the sense that a large portion of us are the sons and daughters of immigrants. So in that sense, we have a unique ability to connect pretty well with the segments of the working class that are migrant workers. And in this vein, I would say that we have learned a lot from the comrades of the Communist Party of Mexico, who have been able to equip us with the ability to reach these workers on a more advanced level through, especially in terms of a practical component, is El Machete being the organ of the Communist Party of Mexico. And the case of Chicago is another great example, because here in this city, 1/3 Latin American, and the portion of that Latin American community that makes up the working class is significant. So not only do we encounter the working class just in our neighborhood, or the migrant workers in our neighborhoods, we also encounter them in the workforce and the trade union movement. And so practical activity also includes the linking of the working class struggle to the struggles of migrant workers. What does that look like? It looks like full integration with trade union rights that are given to all workers, should also be extended to migrant workers who may not have documentation. They are also, that has been part of some of the stuff we've put out in terms of also another practical example. This influence has taken the form of among construction workers in Florida, Honduran mostly, as well as migrant students in Florida as well. In fact, we have found that migrant workers are more, in many cases, much more responsive to the position of the party and what we propose.
Mm-hmm. And well, I'm interested in knowing what happens with these migrants, and especially those who have left from Ecuador. Do they actually join the party, or what's the actual relation with the party?
This is a fantastic question. Most of our work has not approached Ecuadorian migrants. Mostly in our work, we see Hondurans, Mexicans, Venezuelans. In Florida would be Cubans. Not too much with Ecuadorians.
And just about the question, but the actual relation with the migrants, do they join the party? What's the relation that's maintained with the migrants?
The situation with migrants becomes difficult. One, for questions of their legality and the risk of deportation. So the experiences that we have had with migrants has been sensitive, in the sense that they will support the party, they will take the paper, they will show up to open meetings for discussion, or for they will do the situation of the students is where they will also sometimes engage in activities that draw attention to the character of ICE, what it is, what it represents, and how the migrant communities can protect themselves. But it is sensitive, and the migrants, which those of whom do stay around, are those who have already become naturalized.
I'll say real quick on, just wanted to emphasize the point of, it is a very real fear for migrant workers in the US to go so far as even be afraid to participate in union activity, as they fear that even this will put them at risk of deportation or any other sort of troubles. And real quick on the different character of the different positions and orientations of the different migrant communities. Not all migrants come from Latin America. Those that come from Latin America do tend to be more prone to, or more inclined towards, organization, but not all the time. For example, Venezuela, there were different waves of migrants. The earlier waves of migrants were of a much more bourgeois class character, as opposed to the migrants that have come to the US from Venezuela in the past 10 years that have been far more of a working class character. And the case of the Cuban community, or the Cuban migrants, it's pretty stark difference there as well, although not much needs to be said there. And there are more migrants that are part of the American or the U.S. working class, Korean migrant workers who were harassed by ICE, Haitian workers that come to South Florida. There's many groups, Southeast Asian workers as well that come to the U.S. And that all face in one form or another the threats posed to them by capital.
a unique struggle that we have, just to quickly add, is that a lot of these communities are these groups, the working class groups of the different migrant backgrounds are still isolated within their own communities, and they stay amongst themselves. And this is an issue that has slowly been occurring for decades now, where these within the United States, these communities are retreating into themselves, and it is another obstacle that we have to overcome, and that's why we say unity from below with the workers.
Thank you for listening. This concludes part 1 of a series of talks between the CWP and the PCE. Part 2 will feature a discussion about the state of the working class in the United States. And part 3 will feature a discussion on the role of trade unions in the United States. Look forward to those in the coming weeks.